Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Parenting is Easy podcast, where we will discuss the pleasures and the frustrations, the good and the bad, and the rewarding and the troubling aspects of parenting. I am your host, Chananya Abraham, and I'm a psychotherapist that specializes in working with teenagers, young adults, and parents with a specific niche in assisting with communication within the family dynamics. While everyone has their own unique journey and experiences as a parent and as a child, there are many common affiliations and attributes that we can all relate to and share. Together, we will learn from personal stories and experiences from parents across many different backgrounds, cultures, and communities. So get comfortable, grab your glass of coffee, and let's get right into the interview. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Parenting is Easy, Said No One Other. And I am joined today with an awesome guest from another area here in North America. And his name is Matthew, and he is a life coach. And Matthew is a life coach that is known for his action-oriented approach that produces lasting results for his clients. He has developed a simple and effective process based on proven strategies and backed by scientific research. Matt lives in Vancouver Island, British Columbia, with his wife and two young sons. Matthew, thank you so much for coming to the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So what got you started in this life coach, and how long have you been doing this, and what area have you found to be most profound regarding the concept of the parenting aspect of what it is that you do?
Right. Well, I've been a certified life coach since 2014. And I originally got my start because at the time I was in the fitness industry, and I owned and operated a personal private training center here in Canada. And I found that while I got into it with a passion for fitness, a lot of my clients were struggling to lose weight and things of that nature. And I found that while most personal trainers focus on things like the big muscle groups like your quads or your chest and things like that, I discovered that the biggest muscle that most people needed to train was the one between their ears.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And people would come to me and they'd say, well, hey, I've got this problem. I need to lose weight. I need to lose 30 pounds or 50 pounds or whatever it might be. And I discovered that actually the weight wasn't necessarily the problem. The weight was oftentimes a symptom of a mental or an emotional baggage or problem. And when we started to address that aspect of it, the weight, in many cases, just kind of melted off. And so that became my motivation or my driver. And I originally got my certification because I thought this was just going to be another tool in my toolkit that I could use to help my weight loss clients. And I have since kind of moved away from the weight loss industry and into more just personal and professional development, where I get to focus on
brain
connecting.
fitness.
Exactly. Yeah. We're all familiar with the exercise. Well, this is what my mentor, John Assaraf, would call inner size.
Inner size. I love it. Oh, that's a great line. So what does inner size mean for you?
Yeah, well, could be a couple of different things, but for me, the biggest thing is, how do you get in shape and lose weight? Well, you do a number of different exercises repeatedly, and you practice them over and over and over again. Would you agree?
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
100%. Well, inner size is very much the same thing, and it's training your mind and training your brain to function a specific way that might be new, might be different than kind of your upbringing or your past and that sort of thing. And so it's the same principles, but it's applied to your mental conditioning as opposed to your physical conditioning. So hence the term inner size.
Got it. I love it. I think it's so apropos. I'm curious, where does that come into play regarding parenting? And for our listeners here we're working on the concept of realizing that the struggle is real and it's for all of us, and we're all going through something. And as your experience doing this inner size and also the exercise and also being a parent of two wonderful boys, how do you fit all those together?
Right. Well, it's a full-time job, isn't it?
Oh
And
my God.
it's sometimes somewhat of a juggling act. And it's hard to kind of find that balance between doing the
For
work
sure.
on yourself and also showing up for your family and working a full-time job and taking care of a household and things like that. So I'll agree with you and acknowledge the challenges for sure. I love the name of your podcast that, it's not easy. In
Right.
fact, it's probably one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do personally, you know.
Right.
But
And you have been on a journey, so that's that is saying something, and it also shows that no matter where we're holding in life, no matter what stage, if we're switching jobs, switching careers, or living in different parts of the world, it's still something that we're all working with constantly, and it's something that we're always going to be working with. I mean, the joke that we say, at least over here in North America, it's like I think parenting is more of a full time job than having a 7-Eleven and the amount of hours that they're open in a day. And it goes really far just to acknowledge that at first. So can you talk about that for a minute regarding acknowledging the difficulty, and where does that come into play regarding one's mental state of mind, and to your point also of needing to take care of self so that you can take care of others, and having that balance in itself. Where do we start? How does a person get to a place of acknowledging that first?
yeah, well, you know what? I think that that kind of thing has to come from a place of one kind of like acceptance and
Mm,
understanding, but also I find that for myself and many of my clients, the first thing is just kind of like letting go of some of the expectations that people have as far as what parenting should be, what social media makes it look like, and then what our like reality is. And sometimes there's a difference there or a gap. And so I think that learning to be a little bit gentler with yourself and a
mm,
little bit kinder and understand that, hey, not every day is going to be a walk in the park. Not every day is going to be, sunshine and roses. And it's a bit of a process. And I always say to my clients that just like the stock market, there's ups and downs on the way up. And as
yeah.
long as you're doing the work and you're practicing and you're putting in some effort and you're asking for help and using the network of people around you, hopefully it's going up.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so I have two big things to unpack over there. First of all, that going up and down. So I know that's something that I talk about, in my office, is that the process of going through psychotherapy is like climbing a mountain, and sometimes we have to go up, but in order to go up even higher, sometimes we have to take a step down to get better
Right.
footing so that we can go up even further. So that's, I think, to your point of realizing it is like the stock market. So I think that is a very good point over there. And then I think also it's that you were saying something earlier regarding that acknowledgement, and I think it's the first thing is awareness and just understanding, hey, everything is not going to be sunshine and roses, and there are going to be tough days and there are going to be tougher days, and realizing that, and that's okay. And there's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, today's a little bit harder today. Daddy or mommy needs a little more rest time, and I can't get things done. I can't have a 3-course meal for dinner every single night. It's not going to happen, and that's okay.
Right.
And when we're able to then have that, I guess you could say, peace of mind internally and work on that inner side, that's how we get to a place of our kids then seeing it and hopefully internalizing it for themselves. What do you see being like the roadblocks to that, and how do you coach people to I guess you say, take a step back?
Yeah. Oftentimes I think that we come into a parenting role with our own preconceived notions, our own biases, our own beliefs, our own conditioning, our own responses. And so much of that is unconscious, the result of our unconscious programming that took place in our childhood.
Oh yeah.
And oftentimes, like I said, it's unconscious. We're not even aware that that's what's taking place or that that's what's happening. And so when we become parents ourselves, we can oftentimes kind of replicate a lot of our
Yeah.
parenting styles based on what was modeled for us, based on what we learned, and things of that nature. And I think that being able to kind of like draw some, like you said, awareness to the way that you think, the way that you feel, and then stopping and kind of just creating space to ask yourself a few
Mm.
questions And sometimes,
Love it.
that's as simple as, well, I'll say simple, not always easy, but
Very good.
as simple as just kind of like taking a little time out for yourself. As parents, most of us are familiar with giving our children a timeout and that type of thing. But the joke in my household is that like daddy needs a timeout right now, and I'll go and remove myself so that I can
I
kind
love
of
it.
respond rather than react instinctively based on my frustration, based on my emotions and things like that. And
Beautiful.
yeah, I'm not sure if you're familiar with a man named Viktor Frankl.
Sure. Very, very well. He's probably my favorite author.
Okay, I love it. So Viktor Frankl, as you're aware, wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And I mean, Viktor Frankl, his story is incredible. And for those of you who aren't familiar with, and I could be wrong here, you correct me if I'm wrong, but he survived a Nazi concentration camp, and he ended up
Four of them.
four of them. Okay, so there you go. And he later went on to write at least one book and possibly more, and speak to thousands, if not millions, of people around the world. And one thing that jumped out at me from Viktor Frankl, one of the lessons, was he says that between the stimulus and our response, there's a gap. And it's in that gap is that we have the opportunity to
Mhm.
choose how we respond. And that choice is our freedom. And I'm paraphrasing here. I think I'm fairly close to it.
Correct.
Um, but,
Yeah, yeah, it's
but
beautiful. Very well said. And I think the point of that is for us to know we have the choice of how we go about doing things, but it's that
it's
pause.
that pause.
It's that pause when you see that. And I think what it's doing for your kids as well, and not just your kids, but I think all of our kids, when we take that moment, what we're also doing is we're showing our kids is that, hey, it's normal to be a little bit flustered sometimes. It's normal to feel like, oh my gosh, I need a timeout. Not just the fact of taking the timeout and having that the knowledge that, okay, I need to decide what I'm doing right now, but it's also even right before that, like, oh, okay, so it's normal for me to to have a little bit too much air in the balloon, and I need to let it out. And when we model that for our kids, to your point, I think that itself is such a valuable lesson. I mean, there's so much research talking about the concept of the pause and how that goes to a place of being able for us to be in control of our actions, and by implementing that pause, and it's as little as 2 seconds, that allows us to be in control and not be a slave to our emotions. I'm paraphrasing from Cedar Coons, who's a DBT therapist, but that's something that he talks about just regarding I'm sorry, that she talks about just regarding being able to just take a moment. So, are there things that us as parents can do to help create that moment, create that pause, but really the awareness for the pause?
Yeah, I think that it always begins with an awareness. And I mean, I always say, like, how the heck are you going to change something if you're not aware of it? Right? And so it has to begin with that awareness. I think maybe as cliche as it sounds, for me, it always comes back to communication. And
Mm,
that would include communicating with my wife and being able to recognize when that emotion is starting to ride high, and then to be able to say something like, hey, I just need a minute here, can you just give me a second to like think this one through. But I think also,
right.
and it goes both ways. She's really supportive of that too. And rather than, reacting and getting upset with me, she's supportive and helpful. And she'll also do the same and ask, although she's, much better at kind of dealing with those kinds of situations sometimes as a mom, but
Moms usually
it
are.
can be anyway. But
Yeah.
then I think also
Right.
communicating that to our children, to our kids, and
Yeah.
being open and having that dialogue. And to your point there, not only do you model that type of behavior, but you also give them the vocabulary to be able to express that when they're feeling that way a little bit too. And
Beautiful.
so that when they're
Yep.
getting worked up, and I mean, it happens when I've got two young boys, 7 and 5, and I don't know if you had siblings growing up, but I mean, they're kind of at each other sometimes. And when I
Yeah.
can hear them saying to themselves, "Hey, I just need a second here. Like, this is frustrating me," and it's like, "Oh, interesting." So, it goes to show that
Mm,
they're always listening. they're always watching. And at that age, they
Right.
absorb everything. And so I think that communication is a great thing. And I think it helps to give them some of the tools that will help them and support them as they grow to be young men and adults themselves.
Yeah, for sure. And I think when we model it and and they see in us the different things that we're doing to sort of create that awareness and communication, and like you said, I think it's one of the greatest things as a parent when we hear our kids modeling those things, and they get to sort of we get to witness them doing the things that we're wanting them to do based on the things that we're trying to do ourselves,
Right.
and it's a struggle sometimes, and I think that's a very, very big step
You
as
know
well.
what's funny about that is,
uh
oh, sorry, I
yeah,
didn't want to cut you off. What's funny about that is one of my favorite quotes, and I forget who said this. I should really make a point to remember this. But he says that children have never been very good at listening to their elders, but they have never failed to model their behavior. And I think
100%.
that that's so true. And, it's one of those situations where, as parents, sometimes we can fall into the trap of do as I say, not as I do. And
Right.
that simply just doesn't often work. Not well, anyway.
Yeah. That sounds like, I don't know if you're familiar with D.W. Winnicott.
No,
It's something that he talks about a lot in his lectures and books. I highly recommend looking into his stuff. And that's a line that's probably it's straight out of his lectures that have been that were recorded for years on radio and recently been put into books. When I say recently, over the past like 3-4 decades,
love it.
but have been put into books. So that's something that he talks about over there. I want to go back to something you were saying before regarding that unconscious mind and how things sort of work from there. I know one of the things that you talk about a lot is
Right.
affirmations and how beneficial that can come into skills that we need for ourselves and also for parenting. How does that enhance our parenting skills, but also enhance our daily
Right.
lives?
Okay. Well, you may have heard the phrase that, our minds operate just like a supercomputer. Okay. And like any
Right.
computer, we've got the hardware, but we've also got the software. Now, just like a computer can only do what it's been programmed to do, correct? And
Correct.
so what,
Well, for the most part, I don't know about AI right now,
sure,
but that's for a different
right, that's
topic.
an interesting topic too. But so for the most part, the computer can only do what it's been programmed to do. Okay. And what most people don't realize is that, psychology will tell us that the mind consists of two parts. We have our conscious thinking mind or our reasoning logical mind or conscious mind. And then we also have our subconscious mind, which is oftentimes referred to as our feeling mind or our emotional mind.
Mm.
And most people are surprised to hear that your logical thinking mind only accounts for about 5% of what you do in a day.
Mm. Some say even
Some say
less.
even
Yeah.
less, right? And so, what that tells me is that it's our subconscious mind that controls most of what we do throughout the course of a day, a week, a month, a year, decade, or lifetime. Now, the
Right.
interesting thing about this is that, well, it makes sense when you think about it because most of our behavior is habitual and most of our habits lie in our subconscious mind. Now, if our
Right.
minds operate like a computer, well, it's our subconscious mind that is the program that our computer runs. And the programming takes place between the ages of 0 and about 7 or 8 years of age. When your
Mm.
mind
Right.
is, like I said, your subconscious mind is wide open. And at that age, children just absorb everything that they see, hear, taste, touch, and experience. And
Right.
I think it was Marcus Aurelius, I believe, the Roman emperor, who said that, give me a child until age 7, and I'll show you the man, because he knew and
Mm.
understood that it's
Right.
that conditioning and the things that we're exposed to at that young age that determine to a large extent the type of person that that person will grow into be. Now, how do affirmations play a role into that? Well,
Wait, could you first explain what are
okay, sure,
affirmations?
absolutely. So, this is a question that I ask to my clients oftentimes. Are you familiar with the word affirmations? And what does that word mean to you? And most people say things like, yeah, I've heard of it. What does it mean to me? Well, it's a positive statement to myself. And then my follow-up question to that is, oh, okay, well, could it be negative? And
Mm,
people are like, well, I guess it could be negative, but ideally it would be positive. And I say, yeah, absolutely, ideally. But the truth of the matter is that most of our thoughts are three things. Most of the thoughts that we have on a day-to-day basis, okay, are repetitive. About 90% of them are the same thoughts you had yesterday
mm,
and the day before that. Okay. Most of them, about 80% of the thoughts that you think throughout the day are negative, statistically speaking. Whether you would agree with that or not, I'm not quite sure. Um,
I don't know enough information on it, but I hear where that's
okay.
coming from.
And the third thing is that most of our thoughts are unconscious. And this goes back to the idea that it's our subconscious mind.
Yes.
So we're not even often aware of some of the things that we're thinking or maybe even saying to ourselves. And so when I ask, well, could affirmations be negative? The truth is that most people, their self-talk is primarily negative and it's repetitive, but it's also kind of unconscious. And so that would be an example of what an affirmation is. It's a
Mm,
statement to yourself, but it could be positive or negative. Ideally, it would be positive.
mm. As long as it's something that's true for what, for the moment, for the situation, for something that you're aspiring for, like what
Right.
is it
Yeah.
for?
Well, ideally, it's setting yourself up for success to reprogram your subconscious mind. Okay, so as an adult, um, our results in life, it's our personality, our behavior, our actions, the words that we use when we're speaking to ourselves and about ourselves are the result of our subconscious programming. If we want a different result, we need to change that programming, and that's where affirmations come in. Now, now,
Mm,
when I this is a concept that, like I said, most people are probably familiar with. And even myself, I was aware of for a lot of years. Okay. I could tell you all about affirmations. I could give you some examples. I could share with you some famous people and celebrities who swear by it and some of the things that they use to, as part of their affirmations. But if you ask me, well, are you using affirmations yourself? I would have to be honest and say,
yeah, that was my
no,
next question.
I wasn't for a long time. And the truth is, it's because oftentimes there's a really big difference between what people know and what people do. And once I started to use
Mm,
affirmations and I started to see and feel and experience the difference that it made in my life, it's one of those things that it's so simple, but so powerful. Um, I can't not use them now. And now it's become a daily habit for myself, and something that I'm a huge proponent of with clients. But here's what I think is super powerful. And this is all about parenting. And if there's any parents that are listening to this, I would highly suggest taking this tool, and affirmations is a tool, uh, and helping to set their children up for success by using the power of affirmations in a very intentional way. Most people use it
mm,
unintentionally. And so when I really started to truly understand the power of affirmations, I realized that I'm operating with a very small window here while my children are still young to plant some seeds of positivity, strength, courage, confidence into their young minds that will later become a part of their conditioning and a part of their programming as they grow into adults. And so there's a couple of practices, a couple of specific things that we do on a daily
yeah.
basis to help do that. And there are two specific times where affirmations are very, very powerful. And the first is just as you're laying your head down to go to sleep at night, your subconscious mind is wide open. And like if you've ever watched a movie late at night, or you've had a conversation about a person and then you go to bed at night and then you have dreams about that thing all night.
Dreams about
Right.
that
Well,
person.
what
Yeah,
happens is it's your
sure.
subconscious mind is kicking that idea around all night long.
So you're saying doing something like that before you go to bed. Does it have to be repetitive, meaning to use the same one for like a week or a month or something, or can it be something different every night?
It could be something different every night, but I think that, there's power in repetition. And how do you learn
Okay,
anything? Well, you repeat it over and over and over
over
and
and
over
over.
again.
Right.
And they say that repetition is the
That's
mother of
very
all
good.
learning. And so for me,
Yep.
I use the same affirmation nightly with my young boys and have been for a couple of years now. And it's something as simple as we start with I have them copy me and I have them repeat this back to me as they're kind of like drifting off in the evening. But do you mind if I share with you what I say? Okay,
Sure,
I have them
please.
say, I'm smart, I'm strong, I'm brave, I'm kind, I'm capable, I'm confident.
Wow. Okay, so I'm
Yeah,
smart. One more time. I'm
I
smart.
always
I'm
get a little bit
brave.
emotional or choked up when I do this. But here, I'll try again. I'm smart, I'm strong,
Yeah.
I'm brave, I'm kind, I'm capable, I'm confident, I'm happy, I'm handsome, I'm loved. And if I try hard and I never give up, I can do anything I set my mind to.
Ooh. Wow. Well, sounds like the ultimate
Isn't
prayer
it?
before
Right.
bedtime.
You know,
Uh, yeah, yeah, it sounds amazing. That is really good. And I guess to the point of having to do with your kids, there has to be a level of dad doing it himself in order to be
right.
able to do it with them kids. So it's not that you're just having them repeat it back after you, but it's them also hearing dad say it because dad
I was
needs to
just
say it
going to
also.
say the really interesting thing about that is, they often say that one of the best ways to teach somebody or to learn something is to teach it to somebody else. And I find that every time I do that affirmation too, it goes a little bit deeper into my mind as well.
Yeah.
So it's powerful for everyone
Oh, for
involved,
sure.
for sure.
Beautiful, beautiful. So okay, so that was one time to do before bedtime as it sort of enters into the
Yeah, the
subconscious
other
mind.
time is
What was the
kind of
other time?
first thing in the morning. And if you think about it, affirmations, the word affirmations means to make firm an idea or a belief. And so when you're waking up first thing
Right.
in the morning, you want to affirm, and what you're doing is you're reinforcing that same idea that's been getting bounced around in your subconscious mind all evening. But in the mornings, I've
Right.
taken up a new practice, which is a little bit more fun and a little bit different. Same idea, but we've got these little like kids multivitamins. And to be honest with you, I don't know
Sure.
to what extent they work. Maybe if anything, that's some placebo effect to it and that type of thing, or maybe instilling some positive habits for them as young guys.
Yeah.
And
And
maybe,
some
yeah,
vitamin
for
C,
sure.
maybe.
But what we've gotten into the habit of doing is these little kids multivitamins that come in different shapes. And they're different zoo animals or wild animals, I guess you
Right.
should say. And there's like lions and monkeys and hippos and elephants and stuff like that. And so what I'll do is I'll get a lion, and I've gotten into the habit of giving them the lion, but then saying that, hey, this is for courage, for strength, for bravery, and for looking out for your collective family. And I'll give it to them, and they'll eat it. And I just think it's
I love
playful,
that.
it's fun, but it's again instilling some of those qualities and characteristics that you'd like to
Beautiful.
see in a young
Sure.
child. So,
Yeah. Right. It's like giving, like, I feel like the way you're talking, it's like giving the best nutrient enriched water to a new
100%.
plant. And as it grows, it's setting them up for a certain outlook, a certain way of being both to the outside world, but more importantly, I think internally, so that they're able to be better
Absolutely.
in the outside world. So I think that's a awesome approach. Are there places where people can look or find affirmations? Is there something that has to be customizable to self? Can people look things up to find something for them? What do you recommend to people that are
Yeah,
brand new to affirmations?
there's a tons of resources online if you just Google in affirmations. There's one specific to money. There's one specific to self-love. There's others that would be specific to things like
Mm,
fitness and that sort of thing. Um, Oftentimes, what I'll do is I'll actually listen to them in the evening on YouTube, just kind of while I'm drifting off or falling asleep because of that
amazing.
same reason, like I mentioned. But I find that I prefer to write my own. And The
Oh,
interesting
okay.
thing about affirmations is that your subconscious mind, the language of the sub is in the presence now. And so if you're going to use affirmations,
Sure.
you speak to it as if it's already true, as if it's already yours right now in the present moment. And so saying something
Mm, right.
exactly,
I
I
am
am, I
statements.
have, I feel, exactly. So that type of thing. And speaking it as if it's already yours.
Beautiful, and could that's you yet you taking ownership of it. And I guess I hearing how amazing this is. This is something you've implemented in your life. So it'll be a really awesome magical day when your kids are like, Dad, I want to say my own, and then they'll take ownership of the nighttime routine of doing something for themselves, which is something we all want because we want to be able to charge the batteries of our children in the best way possible so that they can do things
Right.
on their own the best way possible. So, and I think that's really setting them up for really, like we say, giving them the real nutrients for their roots. I want to switch over here to, because I know there were a few big concepts, but there's another big one that I know you talk about, and I would love you to share with the listeners over here regarding the concepts of
Sure.
intergenerational living and what that means. I think it's a concept that hasn't been discussed before on the podcast. So, giving us, the really
Sure.
intergenerational 101 class in a really short, little,
So
concise
this is
little
one that
package.
I have more experience with than I do education with, and it kind of came about as a result of COVID and the lockdown that occurred,
Mm,
obviously, that everybody is familiar with. But back in 2000, or sorry, 2020, my wife and I, we were planning on moving, and we had just put our house up for sale, and we were in a transition phase. And when COVID happened, I mean, everything just kind of came to a grinding halt. And we were looking at, well, what should we do? Should we just rent a small place for the time being and let this go run its course? And if you recall, at the time, the phrase that was being used was to, it was going to be a 2 weeks to kind of like, what was that, ride the curve or whatever it was that their people were saying, you know? And
right, right, right. I didn't know they had the same curve in Canada. I thought they had a different curve
yeah,
there, but it's
yeah.
nice to know it
So,
was the same.
the idea was, well, okay, well, we got to ride this out for a couple of weeks until COVID kind of like runs its course. And my parents at the time had suggested, well, hey, why don't you just come stay with us? There's no point in renting a place for a month or whatever it is. Just come and stay with us while we figure this out. And so, as a 30 something year old male, married man with two young children, that wasn't exactly the direction that, I was looking to take, and probably not exactly where every married man wants to see himself, living with parents again and living with family. But I'll
Right.
tell you, um, it worked out to be so much better than I ever could have imagined. And I've heard it said before that one of the best parenting hacks is to live close to grandparents. And I think that there's probably
Mm.
some truth to that. And what's interesting to me is that when you look around at
At least now that you've
yeah,
experienced it, you could
absolutely.
for sure say
And
that.
when you look around at
Mm.
other cultures and different places of the world, intergenerational living is actually pretty common. And it seems to be
Right.
like, here in the Western world or in North America, people will send our kids off to daycares and to, different camps and things like that. And in essence, oftentimes, other people are spending almost more time with our children than we are in many cases while we're away at work and things like that. And what we discovered is that it was mutually beneficial for everybody involved. And what I mean by that is, well, having a couple extra hands on deck as parents while we're trying to build our careers and we're working long hours and that sort of thing has been hugely beneficial when it comes to the child rearing, the cooking, and
Right.
things of that nature. Our kids thrived being close to my parents and having that kind of access to close family. And my parents, who are both in their 70s now, really enjoyed the time with grandkids, but also the conversation that they had with us. And one of the things that they've shared a number of times in the past few years is that a lot of their friends were isolated during COVID, and they really benefited from
Mm,
having access to us and engagement with us and interactions with
mm,
family members. And I found that like everybody kind of benefited from that experience. So for us, it worked out
wow.
really well. Um,
Okay, so like let me hear then like a few tips for recommendations for parents that would either contemplate this or maybe are for whatever situation about to head into a situation like this. What would you recommend be like, standards for setting up the best possible
mm,
intergenerational living situation?
yeah. I think again, it probably comes back to communication and having kind of clear expectations. And I mean,
Mm,
oftentimes frustration and disappointment arise from having unspoken expectations that aren't being met. And it's that
right.
gap which is going to result in the level of frustration or disappointment. The bigger the gap, the more frustrated or disappointed you'll be. The smaller the gap, the less so. And I find that oftentimes we make assumptions and we hold expectations that aren't necessarily articulated. How the heck are people going to live up to those kinds of
Mm-mm.
expectations or assumptions? Yeah, maybe even they're
Unrealistic
realistic, but they're not
expectations.
shared.
Oh,
Right.
okay. Yeah,
And
yeah, good
so
point.
I think
Yeah.
communication is a big thing. I think, one of the things that really benefited us was the fact that we had space to kind of like separate. So the house that we were staying in, we could come
Okay.
together, but then we could also like go to our respective areas or spaces and, still have some privacy and still have some,
Mm,
personal time and things like that.
sure.
Because if you're just living in a small compact room with people on top of people on top of people, it might be a little bit
Yeah, a
tougher, a
little
little bit more
harder.
challenging.
That makes sense. How about like creating that balance between family life as in parents and family life as in
Yeah,
with your
yeah.
spouse?
That's one of those things too that we kind of had built-in babysitters to a certain extent. Some parents or my parents could help watch the children from time to time and that kind of thing. One of the things that we had agreed upon was always having family dinner together. And you might be able to speak to
Mm.
this too, but I've read that statistically speaking, like just having family dinner together, I think the magic number is like even once a week or something like that, once or three, I can't quite remember, times a week does wonders to kind of bring a family together and just create some of those bonds.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I the research show that shows a lot that even one family meal a week brings down the chances of a child falling to addictions and to substance abuse more than
Interesting, isn't it?
anything else. It's I will try to post the actual study that I saw that in on the show notes here, but it was fascinating. I didn't believe it. I even after reading it, I'm like, this can't be true. But having spoken to enough colleagues and I guess in the field that I'm in and working with substance abuse and the addictions world, it's something that the more family and inter that we have with our family, that is one of the greatest shields and gifts that we can give to our kids. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you saying that, and I second and third that, and I believe for sure that's for sure one of the biggest things. And I think also for people to realize that it's not for everyone, and not everyone can just say, oh, you know what, let's have grandparents move in, let's move into to grandparents, and people have to know where they hold and where they are within their relationship and how their kids are. And also, I think to have defined roles, because sometimes having two parents can be hard. Imagine having four parents, how hard that can be as well, just regarding the different rules and regulations of the household or how we go about certain things. So, I think, like you said, back to your point, Matthew, is communication. It really comes down
Right.
to communication. Um, yeah, I think it's absolutely amazing. I love it. I love it. And I think it's something that more than just through the pandemic, but I think the concept of the value of being with and around others, how beneficial that is to the family dynamics. We'll start seeing the research soon to sort of see like what happened with it within family dynamics. But I think when we have those cohesive units, it's one of the biggest shields and blessings and gifts we can give to our kids when we have that type of situation. So I'm looking forward to seeing that research coming out soon, because we're still just beyond the curve of that pandemic, depending where you are in the world. So that's really something that I'm very intrigued by going forward over here. As we sort of wrap it up over here, we have a few rapid fire questions, and we'll sum it up here as well. Curious if you have a either hysterical, funny, or embarrassing parenting
Mhm.
story that you would like to share.
Huh. I'll have to think about that one and I'll see if I can get back to you. I'm not sure. I mean, funny stuff happens all the time when you've got a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old running around.
Oh yeah.
But our kids are pretty well behaved and for the most part, are pretty positive and that sort of thing. I find that oftentimes it's those things that are just come out of left field that kind of catch you off guard that are usually the funniest. But nothing
Oh
that comes
yeah.
to mind at the
Oh
moment.
yeah.
I'm sure something will come up
For
as soon as
sure.
we end the call, though.
How about a word that is
Yeah, you know
mispronounced that you
what?
love hearing from your kids?
My youngest, who was 5 years old, you know, he um, he has a number, I don't want to say his own language, but he has a very particular way of speaking and saying certain things. And oftentimes, what he'll do is when he's talking about holding on to something and putting it down, he'll ask us to hold off, hold off. And if you think of it, he's holding on to it. It makes perfect sense to hold off. And I just
Right.
think that so many of those
Right.
little
Oh, it's
things
so
that
good.
are cute and endearing, and it's those little imperfections and those things that make them vulnerable, which are the
Oh
things
yeah.
that make them so lovable, isn't it?
Oh, beautiful. Well said. And then that goes to the point of making us vulnerable within our parenting, and then it creates deeper connection within ourselves and
That's a
with
great point.
our children as well. So and I think that's a very good way to sort of sum up, what we talked about today. And I guess for me, and then I'll sort of put it to you, if I could, take everything and summarize it in like a sentence or two, looking into the subconscious mind and the importance of affirmations, and people can find their own places to get it, and even making our own and taking ownership of our own affirmations, and having specific times of days that we're able to do it for ourselves and with others. And that's for sure, I think, the biggest thing that I was able to take out of today.
Yeah,
What
you know
about you, Matt?
what? I'm just encouraged to hear that there are programs like this and people are having these types of conversations because I really do think that, to a large extent, they say that, it takes a village to raise a family. And I think that there are more resources out there than ever before. And I think that the idea is to learn from one another, lean on one another, and be open and willing to say, hey, uh, I don't
Beautiful.
have this all figured out. And the truth is that none of us probably do, and that we're learning together. And the more that we're able to connect, I
Yeah.
find strength in that. Where the to be able to
Beautiful.
admit and say, hey, I'm just figuring this out as I go, and I'm going to make some mistakes, but hopefully I don't make the same mistakes over and over again. And when you learn from others, uh, everybody wins, in my opinion.
Yeah, beautiful. We're very, very well said over here. Two more rapid fire questions, but before that, if there are places that people can find you to get in touch with you, do you have anything? Where, we will post in the show notes some contact information, but anything that you want
Yeah,
to share
sure.
regarding where people can
I'm
find
most
you?
active on Instagram, also active on Facebook, but I share a ton of free information. I regularly do free workshops and things of that nature, where we talk about everything from goal setting to success to joy and fulfillment and things like that. Um, and most of the people that I work with are professionals, parents, and young adults. And so I find that the conversation inevitably revolves around, kind of finding our place, making progress towards what it is that we'd like to achieve and accomplish and become. And so much of that is, kind of
Sure.
overlapping as far as concepts, themes, and ideas. But Instagram,
Beautiful. What is that?
I
Yeah,
believe
what
it's
is that handle?
at Matt_Jodouin, Matt mindset coach.
Beautiful. Okay, so I we will post that more in the in the show notes so people can find over here. Two more questions over here. If there was a book that you would recommend for parenting, it doesn't have to be on parenting itself. It could be something that was good for you. And I know you mentioned Man's Search for Meaning, which I would recommend to everyone, not just a parent. But what would be a book that you would recommend?
Number one most gifted book that I give to people on a regular basis is called The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer. And the biggest concept that I got from that book was the awareness that I don't have to believe every single thing that I think. And what I mean by that is so oftentimes, we think a thought or an idea pops into our head and we just assume that it's true because we thought it, we created it, right? And the truth is that if we can kind of like, to your point there, press pause, take a step back and just kind of begin to be the observer of our thoughts and pick and choose which ones we become emotionally attached to, because some are more positive and empowering than others, don't you think?
Yeah. Oh, for sure, 100%. So yeah, okay. So it's what is it called again?
Untethered Soul.
Untethered Mind
by Michael A. Singer.
Untethered Soul. Okay, and you know what? We'll try to get a link to that in the show notes as well. Final question over here for you. If you can think of a regular, daily, mundane superpower that you can have to help with your parenting, what would that be?
Oh, that's a good one. I usually say that the ability to remember everything that I read would be an unbelievable superpower. I would love that. Most people want to be invisible or they want super speed or something like that.
Well, it has to be specific, an everyday task that would be a superpower for parenting.
I think that if I could just snap my finger and the kitchen would be clean, I think that would be a great one. I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm either cooking or cleaning or getting back to cooking. And so I feel like the kitchen is one of those things that's just in a constant process of being clean, isn't it?
Yes. Which I think also means that we're constantly being parents, 100%. Always, no matter what. But yeah. Okay, well, Matthew, thank you so much for joining us. And
absolutely.
Hopefully we get a chance
it's been a pleasure.
To
and again, the honor's all mine. So I appreciate you being here and having me today.
Hey again. I hope you were able to learn as much as I did today. Thank you so much for staying to the end and listening to the entire interview. Please feel free to leave a comment wherever you listen to this podcast. All comments will be read weekly, and we appreciate all feedback and ideas. If you have an idea for a guest or a specific topic, please feel free to share. Additionally, you can contact us at parentingiseasypodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's parentingiseasypodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for joining today, and remember, parenting is a journey. Don't forget to enjoy it. The goal is to be a little better today than yesterday, and hopefully better tomorrow than we were today.